Fantasy Football Warriors. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Warriors podcast. We are your hosts, Eddie Bravo, Tank Sinatra. Here we go. Next 6 games of the slate for Week 13. And we're going to start off with Chargers, Falcons.
Yeah.
Mr. Herberto.
Big time here. Came up short last week against the Ravens. But get so much...
I'll say favorable.
Overall, very favorable.
I say
overall,
favorable.
Easier here.
Oh, yeah.
The Falcons, to begin the season, were definitely much tougher, but as the season's gone on, they're definitely one of the premier passing matchups, and they've softened in the run game as well. And another defense that's kind of softened is the team on the opposite side here. The Chargers defensively have not been nearly as dominant as they were most of the season. The last couple of weeks, obviously, against the Ravens and the Bengals, they've given up a lot more total offense here. So points per game allowed over the first 10 weeks, 13.1. Passing yards per game allowed over the first 10 weeks, 208.9. Over the last 2 weeks, they've allowed 28.5 points per game and 266.5 passing yards per game. So significant uptick here in the last couple of weeks. Obviously a small sample size, but I think it's notable. Obviously they played 2 high-octane offenses with 2 high-octane quarterbacks and the Bengals and the Ravens. So you take that into account. This Falcons offense and Kirk Cousins have not been on that caliber.
No.
So it's very possible the Chargers put up a better defensive holding in this game. Yep. Or maybe it continues and Kirk goes over for, another, 500 passing yards earlier in the season. I don't know, right? But
yeah, I mean, like you said, either way, even with that loss to the Ravens, Herbert still, he'd still put up some respectable fantasy points, right? For the most part, averaging 21 since week 8. He's still rushing, he's still running, right? Still using his legs. It's not like he really rushes like tremendously, right? But still, when you think about that, right? If you think about an average of 30 yards a game, that's 3 points.
Yeah,
30
to
right
50,
there.
You're getting 3 to 5 points.
Yeah, man.
Added on. It keeps the floor a lot higher for him, right?
Yeah.
And in a matchup like this, Falcons are 6th in EPA per pass allowed and 8th in EPA per rush allowed. So they are allowing a high efficiency on both passing and running plays. So Herbert, who's doing a bit of both, should be able to accumulate plenty of yardage in both departments.
Yeah.
And obviously for your receivers here, I'm never recommending Quentin Johnston again. I have been very outspoken.
Quentin Johnston
On my...
Did he put up a 0 burger?
He had 5 targets and 5 drops.
He dropped all of them,
every
right?
Single one of
Yep,
them. I've
he
never
sure did.
seen...
Dang.
As I was looking through the
Man.
stats, I have never seen 100% drop rate in my life. That shit is brutal. Like I said, I've been very outspoken on my feelings about Quentin Johnston.
Yes. That's why I'm laughing.
And then last week, I'm looking at the matchup against the Ravens. I'm like, well, outside wide receivers, Quentin Johnston has had his moments. I recommended Quentin Johnston.
Right, trying to not let the bias get you. Yeah.
And he goes out there and drops all of his passes in Quentin Johnston fashion and puts up a 0 burger. So, like I said, I'm never recommending him again. If you'd like to play him, you can go ahead. But the other receiver on the Chargers that I've been very outspoken about
Little lad McConkey, baby.
My love for it as
Little lad McConkey.
Opposed to my disdain here is Little lad McConkey. And over the last month here, Falcons are allowing 8 slot targets per game. I think Lad McConkey, obviously primary plays in the slot, should be looking at a strong game, especially in a strong passing environment. Justin Herbert is a must-start, and I think Lad McConkey is definitely in that strong to must-start territory.
Yeah, they're allowing most points per game to wide receivers in the last 4 weeks. If you take that Quentin Johnston, if that leaves a bad taste in their mouth, and I mean, who wouldn't have a bad taste in their mouth after that? I see Lad McConkey kind of, being the benefactor, right? Yep. Obviously, of that.
They've been allowing a ton of slot targets.
Yeah,
they've also
9th
been
most.
Allowing a ton of targets to running backs over the last month. Falcons are allowing 8.5 running back receptions. Lead backs are averaging 17.7 fantasy points per game. So as we talked about last week with Gus Edwards, or I guess in the waiver wire video, with Gus Edwards coming in here in relief of J.K. Dobbins as long as he is out. He had a brutal matchup last week, but he actually gets a pretty positive matchup here against the Falcons. So I think he's perfectly fine firing up Gus Edwards, who should be looking at the bulk of the carries here. He's always has a nose for the end zone. Gus Edwards, strong start as well.
Gus the bus.
Will Dissly, obviously, respectable line last week, 4 for 40, I think it was, 8 points, and he's been solid over the last month. And I think you can dial him up in another strong start here and another positive matchup here.
Yeah, I'm not shying away from Will Dissly here.
It's not like anything crazy tight end wise, but just the passing game as a whole should be able to thrive really well.
Yep.
So I'm fine with firing up. Like I said, that's the four main trio here for the Chargers. I would prefer to just leave Quentin Johnston alone at this point. It's just
there's nothing that scares me here for any of these guys. If you got them in your lineups, fire them up. If you want to play them, fire them up. Again, as stated in the last video, we are out of the bye-mageddon. You may have better options. Go with them. If you don't, do not shy away from these 4 players. They should be fine.
Kirk Cousins, I think, is a strong streaming option here. There's risk, obviously, as I mentioned before. Falcons' offense has been all over the place, kind of, and the Chargers, we take that first 10 weeks, have been really strong. Defensively, the last 2 weeks, not so much. So you're kind of, battling a large sample size and a recent sample size here and trying to decipher which one is going to be more prominent in this game. Yeah. So I think Kirk Cousins, looking at the last 2 weeks, has the opportunity to go out there and have a good game, but this is a defense that has shown all season long that they can step it up in moments, and Kirk Cousins doesn't add anything with his legs, so
nope.
You need him to be throwing those touchdown passes.
I was literally about to say that. That's he's the pocket passer, right? Yep, he's not running.
The floor is
anywhere.
Always low, right? You don't have the floor to fall back on there with the rushing, so you need the touchdowns. And if the Chargers defense gets back on track this week, there is some risk. So strong streaming option. Darnell Mooney is
Darnell Mooney here.
Borderline must start. When you look at his splits against too high versus non, it's really funny because outside wide receivers generally get a bump against single high coverages and downgrade against too high. Hasn't really been the case here for this Falcons receiving crew. Darnell Mooney actually gets a pretty significant bump against too high. Chargers play a lot of too high. I think they're 4th in the league in too high rate. So Darnell Mooney, who gets a significant bump, is borderline must start. He could go off this week. Drake London, strong start.
They split safety coverage at the 2nd highest rate in zone coverage, 3rd most in the NFL. So, and then Mooney has a 132.6 passer rating when targeted against split safety coverage. So he's in and that's among wideouts that have at least 30 targets. So he's in a prime spot, man.
Absolutely.
Darnell Mooney is like
borderline must start. Yeah, you need to get him in your lineup here.
Fire the cannon.
Fire the cannon
for Darnell Mooney. Let's go.
We have been lovers. I don't want to use lovers.
Ba-doom.
I'm not going to use the word lovers. We have enjoyed Darnell Mooney's game since his Bears days.
Ever since his Bears days, you are very right about that.
And it's been good to kind of see him finally get going with this Falcons team. So good for Darnell Mooney. He should be in line to have another good week.
Yeah, I think he's in a prime spot here.
Drake London, who should be healthy,
he should be fine.
Yep. He's another one that who actually gets a downgrade against single high, so all of the coverage is kind of what you're looking at in a better spot. So
Pitts, on the other hand,
I'm done with Pitts. Obviously, he had that stretch there for a few weeks, so it was like you need to be starting.
It might be happening.
He's been all over the game or all over the place here. Like over this last several weeks, I think he had 2 out of the last 3 weeks, 1 reception in these games. Like it's been brutal for Kyle Pitts. I'm not looking his way against the Chargers team that's been mostly good. Bijan Robinson remains a must start. He's been getting the bulk of the carries. It's kind of been all over the place just because the Falcons' offense has been all over the place. But it's not exactly a great matchup. But like I said, Derrick Henry just ran for over 140 yards.
Sure did.
I think it was just 140 yards.
140
so the door's
yards
open for Bijan Robinson, and he gets the bulk of the touches here. Not worried about it. I think he's a fine regardless of matchup. I think that's that for.
Is that going to cover Falcons?
That one? Yeah.
All right.
Steelers Bengals. We got a division rivalry here.
Bengals here. I think. I feel like Russell should be in a good spot.
Yeah, definitely.
He's Cincinnati's allowing the third most fantasy points per game and the most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks this season. Russell can get it done with his legs. We know he can.
Yep.
So I feel like he's in a prime spot to do well here.
Absolutely. Like, the Steelers have been very strong defensively, and the polar opposite is the Bengals, who have been all offense. You know, the defense has played very poorly. They're in shootout mode every single game here. So, yeah, I definitely think the entirety of the Steelers' offense really is set up here. With that being said, on the Steelers' side of things, with that strong defense, Burrow and this offense has been absolutely on fire for,
Quite a
month
bit now. Yep.
I can't tell you to sit them. The Steelers have been very good, but if there's any offense in the league right now that's going to overcome it, it's going to be Burrow, Higgins, and Jamar Chase, right? So, as far as the tight ends go, they've been rotating really hard. It's like Mike Gesicki had 100 yards, 2 touchdowns not too long ago. Then last week, Tanner Hudson was the primary benefit. It's just
and it's sad because Cincinnati's given up the second most fantasy points somehow to opposing tight ends.
Or Steelers. I'm talking about the Bengals tight ends right now.
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah.
I was I flew over to mute. My bad.
Yeah. Never really gonna know what's going on there with the tight end day. Any one of them can have a good day, but it's not a strong tight end matchup.
No.
I feel like we need to roll the dice on that one, so I'm not worried about.
It'd be nice if they just stuck with
Mike Gesicki, right?
Right.
We can get to mute though. Bengals have allowed a lot of production to tight ends, like you said, and the slot. There's been some fine outside wide receiver performances, so I'm perfectly fine with Pickens. But you've kind of had a Darnell Washington and a Pat Freiermuth thing going on there. But I think Pat Freiermuth has been still leading in snaps, and he's had some good days here and there that I think in a prime tight end matchup like this against the Bengals,
he should be able to take advantage of it.
Perfectly fine to start him up. So Russell Wilson, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth, as we just talked about, I think are all kind of strong starts. Fire them up with little worry. I think they could all be played. Warren and Najee, I think, are both strong starts. You get another very positive matchup here with the Bengals, who, like I said, as a whole defensively have been very poor. Something of note last week, Jaylen Warren outsnapped Najee Harris. Warren's been trending up since he's come back here.
Yeah, Harris has been declining a little bit, huh?
Yeah, so this is a proper split backfield at the moment, unless something different happens this week, but that's kind of how we see it right now. So I think either one, you can both start up as, high-end flex to low-end, RB2 kind of territory here with the split backfield and just kind of whoever scores a touchdown. Warren's getting most of the receiving work, so that keeps the floor higher. So Warren might be my preference in a strong matchup here just because he also gets the bulk of the receiving work. He's been playing better, as always, right? But I think both can be started in a strong matchup. As far as outside of the norm here, Calvin Austin, as I mentioned, the Bengals have surrendered a ton of slot production as well. I think Calvin Austin, who's found some room here and there, is a perfectly fine flex play if you need him for whatever reason. I think he'd go out there and have a pretty big day. We've seen big plays from Calvin Austin all season long. I think this is a game where we could see it again. And as I mentioned, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Chase Brown.
Yep.
All must starts.
Absolutely. You're not sitting those guys.
Joe Burrow, Chase, Higgins, all been out there playing super well. They've been the focal point of that passing attack. Chase Brown quietly has been a focal point of the passing attack too. He's got 2 back-to-back games with 9 and 7 targets here. So that's keeping the floor high even in poor rushing matchups, which this is a poor rushing matchup. This is an offense that score touchdowns. And Chase Brown is an explosive player that can take carries for extra yardage. Must start the rest of the way, I think.
He's killing it right now.
Yep. No issue with Chase Brown. I'm going to take my victory lap on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I was very, very strong. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in
all off-season long, man.
Content about Chase Brown is the one you want, not Zach Moss. And it's definitely turned out that way.
Yeah, he is killing it. 22.8 fantasy points per game in his last 3 games. 17.6 since week 4. I mean, look, man. The guy's doing it all right now. So
one of the very best offenses in football.
The guy's doing it all.
Moving on, Texans Jaguars. Lawrence, obviously, has been out for a couple of weeks.
Shoulder injury. Yep.
Trending towards playing this week, which is kind of promising for potentially a spot where if he's active, the passing game could be needed. Tank Bigsby is another one who's been out, who's trending towards playing. However, it's overall a bad matchup, right? Texans have looked very good defensively overall. They've had odd spike weeks though, where they just like completely get out of hand. Last week obviously comes to mind against losing against the Titans and Will Levis. The Jets a few weeks ago too. It's kind of been weird where they're like look really good defensively, and at times you're just like, what happened?
What's going on?
Why are you poor right now?
I get that.
So there's that added element here for if Trevor Lawrence is active, there's a possibility it could pop off. Are we really saying Will Levis is better than Trevor Lawrence? I don't know about that, right?
That's because Trevor Lawrence doesn't put mayonnaise in his coffee. If Trevor Lawrence would have put mayonnaise in the coffee, he might be as good as Will Levis.
That's certainly a take. Travis Etienne has been absolutely brutal this season. Bigsby hasn't done much for several weeks, and when they're both healthy, it's a split backfield of ass. It's just, I would just look the other way.
I know. This is another one like we were just talking about the Bengals and their tight ends. If they would just pick one, for God's sakes.
Doug Peterson needs to go.
Oh, that mercy.
Anyway, it's a terrible running back
yeah,
matchup
it's
on
not
top of
favorable.
And now you've got a split backfield with two running backs that kind of just not able to do anything.
Steer clear.
Like I said, this is an option with Trevor Lawrence trending up where I expect Lawrence to have to throw. The running back and the running game is kind of probably not going to be an option at all. And for that reason, if Lawrence plays, I think Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas Jr. are both pretty strong starts here. I think they could both put up very productive weeks where you're more than fine with the productions. And like I said, the running backs that would sit. As we've been mentioning for many weeks at this point, the Jaguars are one of the passing matchups. It's the passing matchup if we really want to get into it here. CJ Stroud, Nico Collins.
Oh yeah.
All must starts. Joe Mixon. Yeah. It's a little bit of a tougher.
Fire the cannon. Stroud, Nico.
It's a little bit of a tougher matchup for Joe Mixon, but it doesn't even matter. Must start for that guy. And Tank Dell, I think, is a perfectly fine upside flex play. He hasn't had the production we've wanted. And
and it's sad.
I think the lesson to be learned is people who break their foot. I think it's a similar ACL thing where, okay, you break your foot, you got an ACL tear, let's just not draft you the next season. Let's wait. We saw that with Tony Pollard 2 years ago. Obviously, he broke his foot. Yeah. 2022, he looked terrible 2023, and he's looked great this year. So, broken foots, just give him time. Mark Andrews is another one who broke his foot a couple seasons ago and wasn't quite right. Just give them time when they break their feet, whichever one it is, right? Both of them, I don't care.
Both feet.
So, so Tank Dell here. It's been a little sad for one of the very best separators in the NFL this rookie season.
It is sad.
But I think just maybe way too early offseason content. Buy the dip on Tank Dell next offseason. I think he's going to be way mispriced because of this, same way Tony Pollard was.
Yep.
Mispriced. People like, oh, Tank Dell's a bum. Tank Dell is this. Tank Dell is that. Tank Dell's the tank, man. And just trust. He had a phenomenal rookie season. I was in love with his college film. I think he'll be fine. He's just got to get back to form over a whole season of recovery from the broken foot that he suffered late in the season on top of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we're buying the dip next offseason, but yeah. Little early here. But in a premier matchup like this, Tank Dell could absolutely go out there, post 4 or 5 receptions, 70, 80 yards, touchdown. Like that's well in the realm of outcome.
It's definitely in the realm of possibility.
So, upside flex play for Tank Dell here as well. All right. Moving on. Cardinals Vikings.
This Sam Darnold roller coaster I'm on right now is really infuriating.
I bet, and it's.
I'm sorry, fantasy football warriors. I'm just I needed to get that out. Venting.
Cardinals last week, as we mentioned last week in our videos, they've been looking a lot better defensively, and they kind of continued that hot streak. Last week there wasn't a ton of production given up, and defensively, once again, we're looking at. Okay, they should be in a prime spot. There's actually since week 7, quarterbacks are averaging the least points per drop back against the Cardinals out of every team in the league. So this sounds like Sam Darnold should be sat. But yes, I have said that so many weeks, and those are the weeks he chooses to
he's
perform.
Just
in the primo
30 pluses.
Yeah,
right. Like in the 40. Man, look.
In our
whatever.
scoring,
In our
obviously.
scoring, obviously, but
in the premier matchups, like a couple of weeks ago, they played the Jaguars. He went out there and threw like 3 interceptions and just stunk up the joint. But then against the Titans last week, he decided to, or not Titans, the Bears last week started to ball out. So
yeah,
it's been really something for Sam Darnold. He can't play well in the spots he should, but in the shitty spots he's perfectly fine. So
Cardinals defense have allowed 8.5 fantasy points to quarterbacks since week 9. Everything says sit Sam Darnold. Got to go with the analytics, right?
Yeah,
Sit Sam Darnold.
I've got him here.
Don't
Sit Darnold, but in parentheses here, been played well, and he's been playing well in these spots,
in these odd spots
all
where
season
he's
long.
supposed to be
So,
sat. Yeah,
just know we've both kind of got that gut feeling like this might just be the Sam Darnold spot to play him in. Just understand,
and you may have better options, right? You may not even have to play Sam Darnold. However,
I'm just saying the door is open for him. This is this is the matchup that he's dreamed of,
right?
For whatever reason. Anyway,
sit Sam Darnold.
I
Do
think,
not play Sam Darnold.
Vikings allowed a lot to the Bears last week. Oddly enough, because the Vikings are another defense that have been dominant all season. I just got walked all over by the Bears. It was an odd week last week. I feel like we kept seeing that where we were just like, what is happening? There's just reversals on
the
reversals.
Bears of all.
So
of all teams too.
I think we trust what we've seen from the Vikings all year long. They've been dominant.
I think so too. I think
this probably is a defensive low scoring game. That's what it's looking like at least. So I wouldn't be uber aggressive targeting this game. Jordan Addison is someone who's been looking up. He has 8 and 9 targets the last 2 weeks. Obviously a plethora of yards, touchdowns, and stuff like that. I think the Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, it's a bad matchup, but I think both of them are high upside options that, they could go out there and put up big games, but the production could also fall off at any time where targets aren't there. And so there's some risk with both of those players, but the ceiling is obviously very, very high. So it's not a great matchup or anything, but I think they're both high upside plays you can get away with. Jordan Addison in the flex, Hawk obviously at your tight end.
Yeah, just since week 9. No touchdowns, second fewest fantasy points to the perimeter. So, obviously, when you think about the perimeter, that's Justin Jefferson's
and Jordan Addison
and Jordan Addison. Yeah, I guess so too. Yeah, just be careful.
Yeah, exactly. Jefferson is obviously a must start regardless. It's hard. I can't sit here and tell you not to start Justin Jefferson.
You're not especially going to say sit Justin Jefferson.
Especially in a tough matchup, that's kind of the spot where you expect, okay, they're going to lean into Jefferson, right? I don't know. It's something to consider, but Justin Jefferson is such a good player that he's kind of one you just got to roll out regardless. I think Kyler, Marvin Harrison, and James Conner are kind of risky starts here. It's obviously a tough matchup. The offense it was just brutal last week. They've been largely brutal at various points of the season, and in a tough matchup, I think you're probably starting them still, but I think you just got to understand there's a ton of risk that they go out there and dud for you. On the opposite side of things, Trey McBride is awesome. He's a must start regardless of matchup. He's pretty much the focal point of the passing offense. So Trey McBride, always doing good things for you.
That's right.
The Cardinals have been allowing a good amount of running back catches on the flip side of the strong defensive showing. Running backs have been catching the dump offs and stuff. So Aaron Jones definitely keeps him in must start territory. Who's been pretty good all offseason. He should have the receptions here to keep the floor high, even if the ground game doesn't get going. We already mentioned Darnold here to sit. How to do it for the Cardinals and the Vikings.
Boom.
Colts.
Patriots.
I feel like this has sneaky shootout potential here a little bit. Two, average offenses, but kind of defenses that have definitely been prone to giving up points here. So I think both these quarterbacks we could have a Drake May, Anthony Richardson shootout. Mid to negative running game on top of it. So both these, you would expect the game plans to be passing because it is a pretty positive passing matchup overall here for the Colts and the Patriots. Patriots should be a spot that Jonathan Taylor can produce. It's a positive matchup, but damn, Jonathan Taylor's been brutal. He's been pretty much unstartable the last couple of weeks.
He's
good matchups too.
He's had some rough weeks. This should be a bounce back though.
I don't even know if I feel confident saying that because he's had other spots.
It has to be.
He's had spots. He's had good matchups the last few weeks, and he's gone out there and been like, 24 for 56 yards. Is that really what we're doing here? It's been bad. It's been really, really bad. He just hasn't been good since that one season, to be honest with you. He's been, man, it's been bad. What was that, 2021?
Yeah, Johnny Taylor.
Brutal.
Bounce back, Johnny Taylor. Come on. I believe in you. 9 different running backs have rushed over 75 yards against New England. You would hope that Johnny Taylor could take advantage of that.
It should be a spot he can.
It should be.
He's had matchups. He's had similar matchups to take advantage of in the past, and he's gone out there and been brutal. So, I don't know. Another one that's been brutal here is Ramondre Stevenson, who's been absolutely terrible this year. I'm very glad, for me personally, I don't have any Ramondre or Jonathan Taylor. And the reason I avoided Ramondre is this exact reason. I was like, okay, this is a below-average offense. This O-line is absolutely god-awful terrible, and that has definitely been the case all season long.
And that's not going to help you running back at all, no matter how good they are.
Yep. And Ramondre isn't an elite running back on top of it. He's just a good running back, right? Just NFL standard average running back here, and you've got a terrible O-line. I was off of Ramondre Stevenson all offseason long for sure. I didn't care about how much volume he was going to get because, I mean, like 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's had 20 carries for 74 yards, no receiving work.
Yeah,
that's seven points right there. Like that's not going to cut it, right?
Yeah.
Even with the 20 carries, I don't know. Anyway, both of these running backs have definitely been letdowns for sure. I think Ramondre is kind of a if you have to start here. If you have to, the potential is, he gets 20 carries, 74 yards, maybe logs, 2 receptions, 10 yards, and you take the 10 points in the flex here. But the alternative is what happened last week, where it's just nothing. I don't know. I think it's a if you have to, but please avoid if you can, especially not necessarily a good matchup. Colts have been not exactly the running back matchup you're targeting. So
hopefully you got better options. If not, I guess maybe you could probably throw them in your flex, like you said, if you have to. But if you got better options, you maybe want to look for.
Yeah, Colts have, overall picked it up the last little bit. They've been allowing less production as of late. So it's something to consider here with, like I said, this has sneaky shootout potential, but the Colts have looked better over the last month. They've been stifling offenses a little bit, but I think regardless, Drake May, Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas are pretty strong starts here.
Yep.
I think all 3 of those players have been enough involved, had enough production that in a matchup with the potential to pop off, probably in your lineups. Austin Hooper is someone who's been, kind of swiveling his way into the tight end room here over the last few weeks. He's had some notable performances, so I think he's an okay streamer. Also, you've kind of got a Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper split kind of going on. So I think he's a perfectly fine streamer. He go out there and have the 3 for 40 and a touchdown that he's kind of been doing.
Yeah,
he's kind of been having these big plays, and you're like, damn, I wish I kind of had him in my lineup, and I don't have these 8 points from this other tight end. So that at some point you got to follow the trend, right? And say, you know what, Austin Hooper's been productive. That's what I said with Noah Gray.
That is
last
what
week,
you did.
And he went out and put up 4 receptions, 50
Take
yards.
the victory lap, baby.
Today, just at a certain point, even for these lower end players that you're like, no way it keeps up. But at a certain point, you're like, well, the biggest predictor of future fantasy points is previous fantasy points. You can look at target share. You can look at first downs per route run. You could look at yards per route run. You could look at all these other metrics that help. But at the end of the day, the biggest predictor, the most accurate predictor, is fantasy points. That's the biggest one, right? So at a certain point, everyone's going to tell you, fantasy football, don't chase points. Fantasy football is kind of chasing points. That's pretty much all you're doing. People that score fantasy points are the ones you want in your lineup. So you are chasing points to an extent, and it's way more chasing points than I think people like to admit. So at a certain point, you got to look at the players that are scoring points and be like, well, I should probably put him into my lineup over the guy that isn't scoring points.
Yeah, and like you said, to an extent, I mean, it's you still gotta see that it's trending too, right?
And sniff it out. Obviously, there's a ton of nuance here, but I'm just saying, like, Dalton Kincaid is a player here who's kind of had he's should be producing with the routes run. This week he had a good target share. And it just, well, at the end of the day, fantasy points aren't being scored, so why the hell am I starting them? Let's move to someone who's actually scoring fantasy points, even if their role doesn't check out the same.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm looking for fantasy points. So, like I said, the biggest predictor is fantasy points. You can look at all the other things to help build a picture, but fantasy points are being scored. You should probably be looking there to get them. That's
from the Tank Sinatra. You better believe it. Let's go.
Appreciate it. I think Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman, obviously Josh Downs has been already ruled out.
Josh
are
Downs
both strong
is
starts
out.
here. This is
my baby boy.
Very good matchup for those two here. Another one who draws a really good matchup is Adonai Mitchell. Patriots play a lot of man-to-man coverage. Mitchell has kind of been their man beater. He's been exceptional at it. So
he has been.
If he can get the targets from Richardson here, he could actually kind of have a breakout day. So I think he's kind of a matchup advantageous start. If you want to bet on it here, it could be fun, or it could continue to just not really turn into anything. You see, that's kind of where I have Taylor right now, where it's kind of like, yeah, it could disappoint, but it's a matchup advantageous start, so probably can look that way, right? So Richardson, Pittman, though, definitely want to get those guys in your lineup this week. Any other notes for Colts at Patriots?
No, we covered it.
All right.
Here we go.
Final game for today.
Hawks.
Seahawks
Jets. And look, I'm going to be very, very upfront and honest with you. Like,
uninspiring. Everywhere. Is that what you're looking for?
I was going to say this game stinks to me.
Yeah.
But
same sentiment.
Yeah. Really uninspiring.
That's funny. We did our research separately and came to the same conclusion.
Look.
But
so yeah, you got your guys like DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker. You're not necessarily sitting right?
I mean, on the Seahawks side of thing, that's a premium matchup.
Yeah, you're not sitting these guys, but the game is uninspiring.
The game as a whole is uninspiring. Yeah, for sure. The Jets have become an overall just bad defense since Robert Saleh got fired. They're brutal in the passing game, not brutal. They're a plus matchup. Let me phrase that a little. Plus matchup in the pass game. They've been a plus matchup in the running game. They're just Robert Saleh was the scapegoat for this team, unfortunately.
Sure was.
Hard reset and coming for the Jets. They continue to be bad. And now the defense isn't even good. So you lost the one thing you had. Your offense stayed terrible, and you lost your defense. So, woo, let's go. Anyway, so bad overall defense here. Seahawks are an okay defense. They have their moments, but they should be good enough to stifle the Jets because they are a good enough defense on this Jets offense. Brutal.
Right.
Jets are coming off the bye, so maybe you get something going here. Maybe they helped. Maybe they improved something. I don't know. I'm just grasping at straws. Maybe the Jets have a little fight in them, but I don't know how confident I can say in that.
I'm not.
However, Jets are a brutal defense, so guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's already been on fire, must start. Obviously, he's going to go out there and he's been producing very well. DK Metcalf is a player that can always go out there and produce very well. So in a plus matchup, I think he's a must start. Kenneth Walker gets the touches, must start here. And I think Geno Smith is a pretty strong start in an advantageous matchup as well. Breece Hall is pretty much a must start, strong start kind of situation here.
He should be in a great spot.
Yeah.
If he plays.
I think he's trending.
Is he trending in the right direction? Yeah. If not, Braylon Allen.
I think he already logged full practice. He should be good to go at this point. Adams and Wilson. I don't know, just kind of meh options. I don't. There's nothing.
I feel like they cancel each other out. I don't know if it's just me feeling that way, right? But I just feel like at one point in the season, you had Garrett Wilson kind of
ascending.
He was like kind of doing his thing, right? And then Devontae comes, and now, and obviously that was in the midst of the turmoil that went on with the team, but
I look at the game. Everything goes on in the game every week here. There's been weeks where Adams and Garrett Wilson have both produced. There've been weeks where neither one of them have done anything. There's been weeks where one of them has been fine, and there's been no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a single rhyme or reason to saying, okay, this is Garrett Wilson, this is Devontae Adams. They're both going off. They're not going off. The Jets have just been such a brutal, inconsistent offense that it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
We're here to help predict. I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, and that's I guess where I feel like they're canceling each other out because I don't really have a predictor of any of it.
Yeah,
so
I think both can be started because there's been enough here with the Seahawks where they've, outside wide receivers. Garrett Wilson is the outside wide receiver. They produced. There's been times with slot wide receivers who Devontae Adams right now is the primary slot wide receiver, has produced. So it's like either one can go out there, but Seahawks are a good enough defense and the Jets are bad enough most of the time that I don't know if that's going to be enough for them. So
right.
I would prefer to stray away from Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. There's nothing here egging me on to say one of them's poised for a good game, but it could happen. So up to you. Is where I'm leaving this
dice.
one. I'm glad I don't. I don't really have to make the decision on my teams.
And
I don't know how to help you out with this decision. On a week with no buys, I really hope you have better receivers. That's my takeaway. I hope you got better. And if you don't, God bless and good luck.
Hey, roll the dice. Go get them.
That'll do it for these 6 games here.
That'll do it. 6 games of the slate, week 13 in the books. For the Tank Sinatra, this is Addy Bravo. We are signing out. Join the militia!
Ah!